on to the next item, public hearing.
Item 6A, receive staff report and presentations regarding an appeal of the Planning Commission's decision to approve a conditional use permit, UP 17-025, for installation of a new wireless antenna on an existing utility pole located at 123 Elm Avenue, and continue the matter for deliberation and decision.
Okay, before we begin, again, I want to remind the audience of the speaker cards. That's how, on this item, you'll be called out and up. We're going to see how many we have, and on the time element, how much each speaker will receive, once I hear from the city clerk a little bit later. Just so we have the same expectations, what we have is we have an appellant who's going to have a lot of time. We have the applicant who's going to have a lot of time. Questions come from council. We're also going to have speakers. My expectation would be that when a speaker is speaking, they have all the respect and the quiet and the dignity to be able to feel comfortable and confident to have what he or she feels is important for us to hear. So during that time, and when they concluded, I'm asking for no applause. Please don't disrupt the process. No commentary from the audience, because you may or may not concur with something that was said, or a fact that you may believe to not be factual. And I think as long as we go through this process, and we all have the courtesy and respect that this community has, we will get to hear a lot of good information this evening. So with that, I'll turn it over to the first, which will be a staff report presentation. Staff will provide an oral report that refers to the written staff report and exhibits.
Mr. Mayor and council members, I'll be delivering the report tonight. My name is David Woltering. I'm the Community Development Director for the City of San Bruno. This item is an appeal of the Planning Commission's approval of a use permit.
Can you speak louder, please?
This item is an appeal of the Planning Commission's approval of a use permit proposing to install one canister wireless antenna on an existing 38-foot, 6-inch high utility pole located in a low-density residential district. The subject location of the proposed installation is 123 Elm Avenue. On the slide behind me is the existing pole location as well as the proposed installation of the canister atop the pole. The proposed wireless antenna would be located on a 7-foot high extension to the pole, which would measure about 4 feet, and it's 14.6 inches in width. With the extension, the total height of the installation would be 49 feet 10 inches, below the allowable 50-foot height limit in this location, per section 12.84.160 of the San Bruno Municipal Code. On November 3rd, 2017, the CBR Group and Verizon Wireless, the applicants, submitted a conditional use permit application for the installation of this wireless telecommunications facility at the subject location. They did this in accordance with our municipal code, section 12.220.040. On June 19th, 2018, the Planning Commission formally considered this application at a duly noticed public hearing. After considering the applicant's presentation and considerable public comment and following lengthy discussion of the Planning Commission voted to approve the conditional use permit to allow the installation of this wireless facility at 123 Elm Avenue. On June 28, 2018, Ms. Leslie Emle, who owns property at 149 Acacia Avenue, appealed the Planning Commission's approval of this conditional use permit, contending that the approval should be overturned based on the project's aesthetics, concerns about notification, lack of certain study reports, questions about a gap coverage analysis, and various ordinance, zoning, and land use implications. The appellant's statement argues that the approximate 50-foot structure is not appropriate in front of single-family homes. On July 12, 2018, staff sent notices of this City Council meeting, this hearing regarding the appeal, to all addresses within a 600-foot radius of the proposed installation. This public hearing was also noticed in the local newspaper. On July 17, 2018, the applicant, Verizon, submitted to the city a 6-page response to the appeal, including various exhibits. This information was received after the formal noticing. That information from Verizon supplemented information previously provided to the Planning Commission, which included a site plan and diagrams of the facility being proposed, site location and photo simulations of the facility, depiction of a gap analysis, and their alternative site analysis, as well as an RF, a radio frequency analysis. And then on July 19, 2018, the appellant, Ms. Emle, submitted additional information in support of her appeal. And during this time frame, we, the staff, received additional emails from various residents regarding this proposed application. Those emails are attached to the staff report as attachment 11. Given the late information that came in after the noticing from the applicant, the appellant, and the number of emails received, staff has not had sufficient time to review and evaluate this new information, nor had the appellant or applicant received each other's recent submissions, as I described, until posted in this staff report. Accordingly, staff is recommending that the City Council receive this written information, which we provided to you in your packet, allow 10-minute oral presentations from the appellant and the applicant, take public comment, ask clarifying questions of staff or the presenters as appropriate, close the public hearing, and continue the matter for deliberation and decision at a date certain in the future. Staff also recommends that the City Council establish a deadline for one additional written submission from the applicant in reply to the appellant's new information, and for the appellant in reply to the applicant's new information. Staff is recommending that the appellant and the applicant be given 2 weeks to prepare their submittals to staff. We're recommending to the City Council that the due date for those submittals be August 7th, 2018. Staff will receive, review, and complete needed research of this information. Then staff proposes to prepare a thorough written report to Council on this matter. Staff recommends that the continued date for the City Council deliberation and decision on this matter be a date certain, and we're recommending September 25th, 2018, to provide sufficient time for analysis and report preparation. Naturally, that meeting would be publicly noticed, as was this meeting. When the matter returns to the City Council with benefit of this additional information and staff analysis for your deliberation and decision, the City Council will consider whether there is substantial evidence in the record to make the following findings. And these findings that I'll describe are based on state and federal law, as well as the city's wireless telecommunications facilities ordinance in Chapter 12.220 of the San Bruno Municipal Code. The findings are as follows. The location, size, and intensity of the proposed operation will not create a hazardous or inconvenient vehicular or pedestrian traffic pattern, taking into account the proposed use as compared with the general character and intensity of the neighborhood. The next finding. The proposed development as set forth on the plans will not unreasonably restrict or interfere with light and air on the property and on other property in the neighborhood, will not hinder or discourage the appropriate development and use of land and buildings in the neighborhood or impair the value thereof, and is consistent with the design and scale of the neighborhood. Third finding. The improvement of the structure as shown on the elevations as submitted is not detrimental to the character or value of an adjacent residential district. Next finding. The general appearance of the proposed building, structure, or grounds will be in keeping with the character of the neighborhood and will not be detrimental to the orderly and harmonious development of the city and will not impair the desirability of investment or occupation in the neighborhood. Next finding. The proposed development is consistent with the San Bruno General Plan. And the last finding, the proposal will not, under the circumstances of the particular case, be detrimental to the health, safety, morals, comfort, and general welfare of persons residing or working in the neighborhood of the proposed use. In terms of direct fiscal impact to the city, staff does not anticipate that the proposed use will have a direct fiscal impact. The city does not receive any revenue for installation of telecommunication facilities on private utility poles located in the public right-of-way. Again, in summary, the staff recommendation is this. Receive the staff report and presentations regarding the appeal of the Planning Commission's decision to approve a conditional use permit for installation of a new wireless antenna on an existing utility pole at 123 Elm Avenue. Receive all public comment. Ask clarifying questions of the presenters as needed and appropriate. Close the public hearing, then continue the matter to a date certain. We're recommending September 25th, 2018, with the understanding that both the appellant, Ms. Emle, and the applicant, Verizon, will need to submit their replies to each other's described new information to staff by August 7th, 2018. That concludes staff's report. Thank you.
Thank you. Just for those that came in during the presentation, we have speaker cards. If you're going to speak on this item, a card needs to be filled out with the city clerk prior so that we know how many speakers we're going to have. Those are who we're going to call and understand. And so once we have these submitted, this is kind of like it. Like, you know, if you're going to buy your bingo card or what have you, this is it. Let's get it in so that we kind of know and we know what we have and we can kind of flow the line, just so that I know people have to get home and have other things to do. And then again, the last reminder that I did have to folks who came in late was just about no applauding at the end, being respectful and courteous to every speaker and allowing them to say his or her piece with no interruptions or comments from the audience. So to council, questions from council members to staff. All right, then we're going to move on to number 3, the appellant's oral presentation. The appellant would come forward, please. And the appellant may provide documentary evidence for the City Council's review and may ask witnesses to provide oral testimony, but it's within the 10 minutes. So 10 minutes will count once you begin, and that will be all-encompassing. And again, if everyone can please give the courtesy and kindness to our speakers.
Before I begin, may I ask a point of order? I'd request an additional 10 minutes for this presentation.
No, sir.
Another point of order, Has San Bruno negotiated with Verizon on the shot clock?
City Attorney?
Sure, I'll be happy to respond to that. That inquiry is not relevant to the appeal hearing that is before the city council. It's not a relevant fact or one of the findings that the city council needs to make.
Did that start my 10 minutes?
Well, if you're going to keep going, then yes, because I know both sides have been trying to work together through this. So if there's going to be more of what you're asking, then the answer is going to be yes.
No, that was a point of order. That's normally not included in the amount of time.
Are you beginning the presentation, or do you have more
I
point
will
of order?
do so now.
Okay, thank you.
The Brown Act, the Sunshine Law, states the people of this state do not yield their sovereignty to the agencies which serve them. The people, in delegating authority, do not give their public servants the right to decide what is good for the people to know and what is not good for them to know. The people insist on remaining informed so that they may retain control over the instruments they have created. The council has, not this council, but the Planning Commission has exercised illegal use of restrictive speech. The Planning Commission informed San Bruno citizens that they would not be heard on the Angus permit because they did not live close enough to the permit. That's illegal under Government Code 54954.3, which states the public may comment on agenda items before or during consideration by a legislative body. Local agencies do not have any ability to regulate the content of that communication. Planning Commission should be so instructed. This request by Verizon should be denied. It conflicts with San Bruno Municipal Code 12.220 at SEEK. That section controls the application. It must be followed, and it requires that this application be denied. Cell sites should be located only in industrial or commercial areas. San Bruno Municipal Code 12220.010 says Section 704 of the Telecommunications Act of 1996 preserves the authority of local agencies to regulate telecommunication facilities based on the aesthetics, visual impacts, and land use impacts. San Bruno Code 12220.020 echoes that. The most important statute is 12.220.050, which states, quote, 1. Zoning. Telecommunication facilities shall be located in areas zoned either industrial or commercial. If a telecommunications provider wishes to locate telecommunications facilities in a residential zoned area, the provider must demonstrate that to the city that no other feasible non-residential location is available that would meet a gap in service or other legitimate business needs. This application must be denied because it cannot be located in the residential area. There is no gap in Verizon's coverage, and Verizon has failed to prove there are no feasible non-residential locations available. It has failed to examine co-location facilities or other alternatives. It has not submitted an appropriate application under 12220.070, which requires a full and complete application. This is a single application, which is not Verizon's plan. This is a stealth operation where Verizon is playing hide the ball by submitting a single application when it expects at least 9 or 20 cell sites. It may expect dozens or potentially hundreds in our town, depending upon coverage. These are sites that cover approximately a radius of 500 feet, and it will need to kite them together. Yet, it has taken advantage of the fact that the Planning Commission and Code only requires notification to the immediate 300 feet immediately affected. This is a matter of extreme public importance to our community. I strongly recommend that the City Council adopt an emergency measure and amend this law so that we have notification on a citywide basis of elements of industrial intrusion into our neighborhoods. To the people I've spoken with, they have uniformly said they had no idea that a cell site tower, location, or web of cell sites was coming, and that's because of this 300-foot notification, which is woefully insufficient. In a residential neighborhood, an R1 neighborhood, it would be preposterous for any neighbor to attempt to build up to 50 feet. There is no reason why this town should allow a telephone pole with what I consider to be a dangerous cell tower on top of it to reach nearly 50 feet. Verizon must be required to submit an entire plan, not for a single tower, but for all it intends in San Bruno. A single tower, we know, is useless. The recommendation by the Planning Commission is not legally sufficient because it is not substantiated with substantial evidence as required by the San Bruno Code. We expect our City Council to base its decisions on grounds that are legally supportable, such as the danger of a fire hazard, an insufficient plan submitted by Verizon, or a decrease in property values based on concerns about fire, earthquake, and wind. There are no reports submitted by Verizon showing that adding nearly 20 feet to a 30-foot utility pole does not stand to fail in the 7 or 8 degree magnitude earthquake that our Bay Area is overdue for. There are no peer-reviewed engineering studies that show that this application is safe. There is similarly no consideration given to the fire danger that a cell tower presents. We know from the recent examples of the Sonoma County fire, the Sulphur fire, and the Malibu fire that PG&E poles are overburdened by telecommunication equipment. They fail and they cause massive fires. Lives have been lost, property destroyed, fines levied, and damages have exceeded millions of dollars. Why would San Bruno not wake up to that reality? There are strenuous winds in San Bruno. There is no peer review or any consideration in Verizon's submittal that shows that their towers will not be susceptible to toppling over. This city has already been through a catastrophic event with PG&E's pipeline explosion that claimed the lives of 8 of our residents. As a community, we mourn them. We have a sculpture to them outside our rec center. How could we let another disaster happen by allowing Verizon to come into our residential neighborhoods with these cell towers? To Verizon, I think you should be ashamed of your corporate behavior. You are trying to sneak these cells into our residences so that you can save money over installing appropriate cell towers in appropriate locations. This is a public relations blunder waiting to become a fiasco. We request that the city deny the permit of application, grant our appeal. It's the law, it's what's right for San Bruno, and good conscience requires this result.
I provided extensive information to this council in advance of this meeting, which shows the impact of the 4G, 5G tower design on people's health, the environment, and the aesthetics of this neighborhood. The radio radiation small cell antennas are going not only to be 50 feet in height, they're going to be atop of PG&E poles with wind-driven cooling fans. They'll produce noises. We have electrical supporting equipment mounted 7 feet above our narrow sidewalks. These installations pose a significant danger to health, public safety, and the beauty of our community. Please have these towers placed safely outside our neighborhoods. We have cities of Burlingame, Hillsborough, Monterey, and Burbank. Their city councils have voted no to allow Verizon to install the 4G and 5G towers in their neighborhoods. Why should San Bruno take a different course of action? We've got to stop this. If there are the severe winds that we have every winter and on our afternoons, we've got hurricane force winds, and if one of these comes down, we're going to have a fire, the potential of a fire, just like they had in Malibu Canyon when a similar type of apparatus came down, sparked the fire, and took that canyon out. I thank you for allowing us to be here this evening and present this. I hope you take all this into consideration.
I'll supplement on that time,
Please.
if I may. I would
You're
point.
interrupting his time.
I'm sorry? Thank you. I want to point the public and the City Council to page 77 of the 220-page packet that comprises this submission. I believe there are dangerously high levels indicated in that page of the report. This is a tower that's going to operate at 50 feet, and what that page indicates is that at the 10-foot level, a person can stand in that area for a total of 6 minutes before they receive a dose of radiation that is declared to be unhealthy by the federal standards. Well, what's going to happen on the second floor where people are sleeping? We know cell phones are wonderful, but they're dangerous. At least you can take a cell phone away from your ear. You cannot move away from a tower that is placed outside your bedroom window. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, questions from council to the appellant? Laura,
I would just like clarification. I heard the person say they were adding 20 feet, but my understanding was it was 4 feet on top of the pole.
I don't know the exact numbers. I believe the pole's 33 feet, and there's a height restriction in San Bruno that says it shall not be more than 50. Verizon brings it up to 49 something, like 49 10 inches. So they add something and then the antenna, which gets it to 49 and I think 10 inches.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I would caution people to be careful of what they say because that's not adding 20 feet. If it's already 38, adding 20 feet makes it 58, so.
Okay, please.
I'm going to hold my questions until after all the presentations.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Coming back to the podium. Sorry, I shouldn't have had you sit down and then have you go back. I apologize. So now we have the applicant's oral presentation, which is 10 minutes. The applicant may provide documentary evidence for the City Council's review and may ask witnesses to provide oral testimony as part of this 10 minutes.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. My name is Mark Peters. I'm with the CBR Group. We are the applicant and agent for Verizon Wireless on our proposal. We are proposing to add a 4-foot pole top mounted canister antenna on top of a wood safety extension that is 6 feet for an overall height increase of 11 feet. There are 2 remote radio units mounted on a standoff bracket that's mounted to the pole. We have an electric meter and electrical safety disconnect that are also mounted on the standoff bracket. There's some associated cabling. And then there's what we were proposing, a solar shield or sun screen to cover the cabling to improve the aesthetics of the facility. All the equipment will be painted brown to blend in with the pole. The height of the existing pole is 38 feet. And our overall extension will be below the 50-foot maximum. And I apologize if I'm a little bit redundant to the excellent report by staff in presentation earlier. We started this process February of 2017 internally, where we looked at sites in the area. Through that process, we chose what we felt was the best location within our coverage objective. We created engineering drawings by October. We made a submittal to the city in November of last year. We met with city staff in May of 2018 to review our proposal on site, and we, at that time, actually removed components of the design to help improve its aesthetics and improve its integration, with the character of the neighborhood. The city of San Bruno noticed. Thank you. The city of San Bruno noticed the 300-foot, within a 300-foot radius, based on your ordinance, for the public hearing that we had with the Planning Commission. In the interim of that time, we met with residents on site to answer their questions as best we could and discuss design. As we have removed many of the components of the cell site that we could, meaning the battery backup unit, which was a ground-mounted cabinet, we removed, and we came to a 2-radio design. We've slimmed the site down to the smallest aesthetic footprint that we can. On June 19th, we presented to the Planning Commission and were approved. And there's not enough time available in this forum to discuss everything we talked about with the Planning Commission, but there are a few brief points that we talked about at length. I apologize, my notes are out of order. We discussed the safety of the facility, both the structural components, which were mentioned by the appellant tonight, at length, and the electrical review. The City of San Bruno has a building department and a public works department that does peer review on things like structural capacity. We also discussed the other regulations that we are required to comply with. California Public Utilities Commission General Order 95 regulations, as well as environmental regulations that are federal and state requirements. We talked fairly extensively about the aesthetics, and the smallest design that we could refine the site to was what we utilized, and the addition of other components, the solar shields, to improve the aesthetics. We also discussed at length alternative sites to this one within our coverage objective. We had approximately 25 structures above ground. This would be wood utility poles, light poles that are available for Verizon to potentially site on. 19 of these were of no significance or meaningful difference to our proposed facility, and I can explain that later if you like in greater detail. 5 had GO 95 Rule 94 climbing space restrictions that made them unusable for us, and 1 had PG&E safety fuses on the pole, which made it unavailable to us. One of the alternatives that we did not discuss was that if there are no viable alternatives, that an additional alternative, or there are no viable or better alternatives to the pole that we selected and have proposed, would be to install a new pole within the public right-of-way, which was discouraged by the city. I would like to, we have an example of the sun shield that was mocked up in Palo Alto, and I'm sorry I don't have better pictures, but that's the only one. And then I would also like to introduce other people we have on our team who are going to speak. Mr. Paul Albritton, outside counsel to Verizon.
Good evening, Mayor Medina, members of the council, Paul Albritton, outside counsel for Verizon Wireless. Thanks for your time this evening. Verizon Wireless is coming to San Bruno to provide a small cell network in order to meet capacity demand for Verizon Wireless's network. Our capacity demand is doubling almost every year, and nearly 52% of households don't have a wireline phone anymore, and this is the demand we're trying to meet with these very small facilities close to the end user, low wattage facilities. It's the new topography. Dwayne Bonham is here, the RF engineer who designed this network, and he can answer your questions about that network. I want to explain that Verizon Wireless is a telephone corporation, and so under California Public Utility Code Section 7901, as a telephone corporation, we're allowed to put telephone equipment on telephone poles in the public roads and highways of the state of California. And your role with our rights to put facilities in the right-of-way is to determine the aesthetics and the extent to that those facilities may incommode public access to those facilities. So issues regarding gap really are not any of the findings that you heard from the planning director, nor are they relevant with respect to a telephone corporation's right to put facilities in the right-of-way. You do have quite a bit of authority, though, with respect to aesthetics. And so in that regard, Verizon Wireless does everything it can to minimize the aesthetic impact of these facilities. To begin with, we use existing poles, existing vertical infrastructure, instead of trying to put in new infrastructure. In this case, we designed the network to have the minimum number of poles, and then within the area, the search area for this pole, we looked at 25 different vertical structures to try and determine the one that had the least impact. And there's an alternatives analysis in your packet that reflects that. Then we looked at design. We actually came in with a design with 3 radios, a battery backup unit mounted on the ground, And we, in working with the staff, eliminated a radio, eliminated the battery backup unit. There are no moving parts, no noise from this facility. It's designed to have a slender antenna that matches the verticality of the utility pole. The radios are designed to be narrowed and placed on the utility pole so that in the end it will look like a telephone pole with telephone equipment in it. And we think that the references to aesthetics in the appeal are just are overstated. I want to briefly talk about safety. There has been great concern by the appellant regarding the safety of these poles falling over. There are really 3 checks on that. First, CBR Group does a structural analysis to determine whether they think the PG&E pole needs to be replaced. Second, PG&E does an analysis and they determine whether the pole needs to be replaced or can handle the equipment that we're going to be putting on it. And PG&E, we have to pay for the replacement pole. So if PG&E has any incentive at all, they tell us to replace the pole, but they look at it. Finally, your conditions of approval, number 4, number 10, require that your building department issue a building permit to us, and so they also will be looking at the structural analysis. You have 3 checks to determine and confirm that this facility will meet all wind loads and seismic requirements. Finally, on health, there's the radio frequency emissions. I want to turn the microphone over to Dr. Gerald Bushberg. He is a medical physicist from Davis, recently retired as an associate professor of oncology. I want to say that we submitted a report, the EBI report, that showed that we comply. You commissioned a third-party report from Hammett and Edison to confirm that we comply. And once we comply with FCC guidelines, then it's really sort of off the table in terms of your decision-making. But we want to have Gerald Bushberg here to answer any questions you have. But that I'll turn it over to Mr. Bushberg.
Good evening, members of the council. I'm Gerald Bushberg. As I said, I'm just recently retired emeritus as a clinical professor of radiology and radiation oncology at UC Davis. I reviewed the applicants' radio frequency reports and found them to be credible. I think there's only a couple points I wanted to make. One is that I know a lot of people are concerned about new technology, and when you think about wireless in its current form, it's actually a combination of 3 relatively old and well-established technologies. It's the putting together of the computer, the telephone, and the radio in a way that allows for mobile telephony. And the channels that we used to use in the television band, I don't know, some of you may not be old enough to remember when we had those UHF bands, we turned that dial past 40, remember those? Well, those frequencies have been reallocated to wireless communications. And they actually used to be broadcast at much higher energy levels than are being used for mobile communications. But it is just a coming together and repurposing of something that we're actually much more familiar with than you might imagine. The other thing I would have you take into consideration is that while you may hear a lot of things that come from the internet or published scientific studies, one of the most important things to realize is that
Sir, you're going to need to wind it up, please.
Not all studies are created equal, and it is not just the quantity but the quality of the studies that's important. And that's why independent commissions are necessary to review and opine on the collective body of evidence. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're available for questions.
So now, it'll come back to me, to the council. Questions from council members to the applicant. Any at this time? Yes, Martin.
Yes, please. Thank you. So the question or the comment that I heard was this network of antennas that one of your employees designed. How many of these antennas is in that network to be installed in San Bruno, other than this one that we're talking about now?
We have 9 applications that we've submitted to the city of San Bruno at this time. There are some more locations that have not been resolved yet because there are either no available structures or the only available structures are city-owned street lights, which at this point Verizon and the city of San Bruno have not come to an agreement for use on.
I have to say, regardless of whether we had 1 pole or 9 poles approved, we would install that 1 pole. In other words, each small cell is independent in terms of the service it provides.
Got it. What is your other alternative than putting these antennas in a residential area? What would that be?
Well, hello, Dwayne Bonham, RF engineer for Verizon Wireless. Would be to put full-blown, what we call macro cell towers within the residential areas. The issues we're having now is the usage isn't confined to the industrialized areas of cities. People utilize their phones at their residences in the evenings. many of our peak usage times on a lot of our sectors of our network are in the 9 to 11 p.m. range when there's nobody in the industrial areas. The change in the way people have used the technology is requiring us to change the way that we design the networks. We're doing everything we can do to continue to provide service without putting in new facilities. It's cheaper for us to upgrade our old facilities than to put in new ones, so that's an advantage to us. However, serving a large number of users in residential areas from a distance is not really possible anymore. The frequencies that we get, we purchase new frequencies, we're allocated new frequencies in order to expand our service. However, those frequencies end up to be higher frequencies. The higher the frequency and the higher the technology, 3G, 4G, eventually 5G, the smaller the area that a cell site covers. So while this residential area may be served well currently in the voice technology from a site that's 3 miles away, as we get up to 4G and 5G, those sites will only cover out a mile, leaving these neighborhoods somewhat uncovered or with extremely slow speeds, because the lower frequencies that get out to that distance will become overloaded. Hope that makes some sense.
I'd just like to clarify one thing, and that is that these networks cost about 3 times what it costs to install a network with macro cells. So the concept that this is somehow a less expensive way of providing service is completely inaccurate.
Laura?
Yeah, I have a few questions. So, I mean, there's a room full of people, and it's very obvious that they're against having a cell tower into their neighborhood, right? We're all residents here of San Bruno. And, you know, there's a concern, I would say, that you open the door, you allow this in Elm, it's coming into every other street in San Bruno. The 9 applicants that are sitting there, there's no reason why we wouldn't want to approve those. And I think, and I've heard this a few times tonight, but I want to make sure that the residents understand this and those in the room understand this. The discussion we're having isn't about the health risk. If I pull my phone out right now, I would tell you I have 1 bar on my cell phone. And it's my understanding that the radio waves that I receive on my cell phone, if I was to put it up to my ear right now, is much greater than that cell tower if it should be installed on Elm. That the greater the signal strength is, the less the radio waves will be coming toward me. And we all use cell phones. I mean, in fact, many residents and many new millennials that are coming in don't even have cell phones. I mean, they have cell phones, they don't have house phones. So we're always on our cell phones. We want good coverage. We want to be able to make that phone call. More importantly, I want to be able to make that phone call in an emergency. And I've had to use that on a number of occasions. So there's a concern, right? The fact that between 9 and 11 p.m. is a peak service. Why is it peak? Because exactly what everybody's doing. They're finally home. They're away from their jobs. They have the opportunity to now talk to family, reach out to family members. We're on our cell phones. So I, too, as a council member, sit up here and have big concerns about the cell phone and the safety of it. So is there anything more that you can address to, again, appease our concerns? Because I care just as much as the rest of you care.
I think you make a very good point about the typical exposure most people have today in a modern society. The vast majority of people's exposure from radio frequency energy comes from either their cell phone, if they use a cell phone, or often from someone else's cell phone. And you also made the point, which is often misunderstood and somewhat counterintuitive, that when you have poor coverage, your phone actually broadcasts at its maximum intensity in order to be able to make the connection to the cell site. It's something called adaptive power control. And so the nearest antenna wants to see a signal at a certain level, and if you have very good coverage and you have all the bars on your phone, the site will tell the phone to turn its power all the way down to its minimum level to make the connection, keep the noise down. Mm-hmm. When you have just the 1 bar, you're far away, you have a poor connection, the site will tell the phone to turn it up to its maximum. And the difference in your exposure between that minimum and that maximum is about 1,000 to 1. And so if you were to ask the best way to reduce one's overall exposure and still have wireless technology would be to have very good coverage so that everyone was having their phone operated at its lowest possible power.
Thank you. Another question I would have would also be in reference to noise, right? I'd hate to have something humming in my backyard. I have a pole, and I went out to it, and actually you really don't realize how ugly those poles are, and the wires are off of them. I mean, there's a ton of wires, there's boxes, it's coming to houses. It actually has grown over the years without me even noticing it, but it is ugly, and I have a pole directly in my backyard. So tell me, if I'm going to be in bed at night, if I've got a pole in my backyard, am I going to hear humming noise? Because that's going to irritate me.
First, I want to say for the record that was Dr. Gerald Bushberg who gave that presentation, and I'm Paul Albritton, outside counsel. First, in meeting with your staff on site, Verizon Wireless elected to remove the battery backup unit. The battery backup unit provides service in the event of a crisis, but it also has fans that cool the batteries. By eliminating the battery backup unit, we have removed all moving parts from this facility. The radios are designed to be passively cooled. They have fins on the back so that they're passively cooled. The antenna itself has no moving parts, so there is no noise whatsoever from this facility. So we absolutely comply with your noise ordinance. I want to add, Verizon is not opposed to undergrounding. Should you go through an undergrounding process, generally we find, and this is true in San Francisco and other cities, that streetlights are put in. And then we will migrate our facilities to a streetlight topography. So the fact that we're putting an antenna on a utility pole doesn't mean it's going to be there forever. We're, in fact, following that course through cities as they progress and modernize. So we're not mandating the utility pole, but we are taking advantage of it as existing vertical infrastructure and not installing our own pole, which we have the right to do. And then we've taken the battery backup units out, so there's absolutely no noise from these facilities.
Okay. I have questions later. I'll ask after.
Okay, at this time, thank you very much. You may be seated.
Thank you.
City Clerk, how many speaker cards do we have?
We have 11.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and do 2 minutes each for each speaker. And if the City Clerk would begin with the first, please. And again, during this process, if we give the courtesy and respect to each speaker, all the way from the start to the finish, and the applause and other comments are not necessary. It really is sometimes hard to get up, and we want to really have that confidence and give that courtesy to each person.
Karen Cromosini.
Good evening. Thank you for, I would just like to say that I'm really concerned about this. It's just not about the big poles. I was once wondering, would you like to have that in front of your house then? And but the health, is that, have they really checked into that? If there really are health concern. And so I just would like to address that it's, I'm really against this, okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Next, please.
Rhonda Sims. Thank you, council members. I asked this council to obtain and share the full rollout plan, as we had mentioned, and in their effort to propose and oppose the installation of the Verizon towers. If the end-to-end plan is to install multiple towers, then all impacted citizens in San Bruno should be informed, not just those within 300 to 500 feet of the first proposed tower installation. All citizens should be provided access to the data that details the risks and benefits of the tower placement and function. And this is in detail the location, appearance, sound, if there is any, which we've already determined, liability, who's responsible for damages to health and property, safety to the environment, etc. And then given this opportunity for all the citizens to have an open forum and vote to approve or deny any installation. Approving Verizon's plan without transparency to the citizens of San Bruno means this council may have ignored documented impacts of the tower design and function on people's health, environment, and aesthetics of our neighborhoods. But most impactful is that the council made the decision in a vacuum, uninformed, and without regard to the voice of the people who voted them into office. San Bruno isn't the first town Verizon has pushed on, and we are going to be the last that they do. Help me defend my right to health and safety in my town. I ask this council to say no when the time comes to the Verizon tower installation. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Rhonda. Next, please. Next speaker, please.
Allison Mazzola.
Today I went to our local Verizon store. The representative there assured me that I could drive an hour in any direction from my home and not encounter any coverage gaps. The Telecommunications Act of 1996 would allow these towers if there was a gap in coverage, not when there was only a lack of bandwidth. It's only about coverage. Since there is no gap, this regulation does not apply in this case. Cappuccino High School has become an asset to our community. The new rec center will also be an asset to the community. These 4G and soon 5G cell phone towers, however, will not be. I'm raising my family in this community, and the danger to our health is huge. Everyone knows not to use their cell phones a lot. We're able to put the phone down and walk away, but these towers will be in our neighborhood 24/7. I am concerned for fire safety with these tall towers and high winds. I'm concerned for our property values. We all know that San Bruno has lots of wind. Look what happened in the North Bay. This could happen to us as well. If you approve these towers in our neighborhoods, you'll be putting the health and safety of our families at risk for no reason.
Thank you, Allison. Next speaker, please.
Richard Baker.
Please, folks.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm going to read my notes very quickly, my bullet points. The Verizon 5G cell tower is what I'm looking at this as. I'm a Verizon customer within the 300 feet of the proposed location. Current LTE levels appear to be just fine where I live. 2 of 4 signal bars both inside my house and on the sidewalk outside. 3 of 4 outside 123 Elm. So there does not appear to be a lack of coverage where the site is going up. I'm concerned with the current telephone poles supporting the additional height in the hurricane winds that we do get. We get sustained hurricane 70-mile-an-hour winds in the winter, and we're looking at 100-mile-an-hour gusts. Will this additional height, again, apply enough force to start knocking poles over? Concerned with the techno-blight of the pole-mounted hardware and the new poles going up. I was going to say that the AT&T DSL boxes that are positioned around the city are not an attractive addition with their concrete footprints and the metal casings. They are not an attractive thing in this neighborhood. Why do we need the residential neighborhood cell site? I have heard that Verizon provided motherhood and apple pie. We've also heard that there's capacity issues. The network design, the backhaul, the latency, the fault-tolerant geo-redundancy and how it's built out, it would be very interesting if the public could have a look at that as well. Our neighborhood lost telephone service when AT&T was cut the wires a couple of years ago. San Bruno Municipal Cable's been out several times. The backhaul that we've been looking at is not going to be reliable for any special purposes, and it's Verizon's 4G that has helped us be able to communicate. The introduction of 5G, when it happens, is a mesh network. It does not eliminate 4G, so 4G will continue, and 5G is a new low-path item. The last thing is, I really don't want to have these poles and these structures in the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard, for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Paul Larson.
Hi, my name is Paul Larson. My residence is 123 Elm Avenue in San Bruno. I've been a resident for 34 years. My address at 123 is the first of 17 proposed Verizon small cell antennas, which we were told. The pole at this site is slated is directly in front of our home and is less than 30 feet from my master bedroom. The thought of the exposure to radiation and electromagnetic fields at such a close range and other potential dangers 24/7 makes us very fearful for ourselves and our children, and particularly our grandbabies. Would you like to have this looming over your head as you lay in bed at night? We do not want this in front of our home, not even in our neighborhood. They belong in an industrial or commercial area. There has to be an alternate site. They have exempted the firehouses throughout the state from having cell sites in close proximity because they live, work, and sleep there 2 to 3 nights a week. Please give our residential areas the same consideration. The safety and well-being of the San Bruno residents is our first responsibility. Please stop this from happening to my family and neighbors and the other 16 families and neighbors of the other proposed sites. Burlingame, Millbrae, Monterey, and Santa Rosa have said no to Verizon. We, the people of San Bruno, are all saying no, not in our community. And yes, I do want to look out my front window. Do not want to look out my front window and see ugly apparatus hanging off the pole in front of my home. This may be just the start of all the other cell phone companies piggybacking off this door you may be opening. Let's stop it right now. Close that door. I ask you to please deny this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments, Paul. Next speaker, please.
Stacy Tolentino.
Hello. Good evening, Mayor Medina, City Council members, and neighbors. My name is Stacy Tolentino, and I've been a resident of San Bruno for 29 years and a homeowner here for 23 years, where my husband and I have been raising our family. So it's safe to say that we love this city. Our neighborhood is a close-knit one, so even though the city of San Bruno was not very transparent about this cell tower issue, our dear neighbors spread the word. So I'm here tonight to let all of you know that I do not want cell towers in San Bruno. Make no mistake, Verizon presented this cell tower project as a 4G installation, but their plan is to upgrade it to 5G technology. On a February 2018 episode of the Dr. Oz Show, Desiree Jaworski, Executive Director of the Center for Safer Wireless, said, "I think it's outrageous that we're going to be bathed in 5G frequencies when there really hasn't been adequate testing in this country to make sure that we're not going to be impacted by it." On the same show, radiologist and medical journalist Dr. Nicole Safier said, "We don't have anything thus far on long-term chronic effects on low-dose radiation." That is where I'm concerned. I have the same concerns, as I'm sure most of you do as well. Another concern I have is regarding the safety of the aged telephone poles where the cell towers would be placed. Nina Beatty, an educator and member of the California EMF Safety Committee, said this on June 9, 2017 in the East Bay Times. "Look around you and see the leaning, bowing poles next to homes and buildings, hanging over streets and sidewalks. Malibu Mayor Andy Stern called these time bombs. Add more gear, multiply the number of poles impacted, and what will be the result? Well, in 2007, the result was the devastating Malibu fires caused by overloaded telecommunications on utility poles, for which Verizon and other popular cell phone companies were to blame." Nina Beatty also reported that FCC exposure guidelines were derived from industry, and there is no
Stacy,
policing
if you could.
or compliance testing of cell towers. I'm almost done, please.
Thank you.
Many exceed federal limits. So how is it that the Planning Commission of the City of San Bruno thinks it's okay to approve cell towers which haven't been tested or studied? This is unacceptable. It will put our health and safety at risk just for the sake of faster, uninterrupted internet speeds. So I urge you, on behalf of more than 40,000 citizens of San Bruno, to reverse the decision you made on June 19th. Please do not allow Verizon to install a cell tower on Elm Street or anywhere in our city. This will show us that San Bruno really is a city with a heart. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Stacy. Please, folks, I've asked no applause. And just as a reminder, when it goes yellow, you'll notice that that's about a 30 seconds to start to wind it up. And I'm not going to cut anybody right off, but if we can kind of try to keep to the time so everybody has the equal. You're very welcome. Next speaker, please.
Susan Burns.
Well, council, you can look around. You can see we are here, San Bruno. Only a few of us were notified about the cell tower Verizon wants to install on Elm Avenue, which will be one of many. But we don't want them in our neighborhoods, and we don't want the exposure of radiation around our families, our friends, and our neighbors. So hear each and every one of us that we're here speaking tonight, because we are San Bruno.
Sorry. Thank you very much, Susan. Next speaker.
Eleni Tripsa.
Good evening, everyone. Eleni Tripsa at 152 Acacia Avenue, an owner and resident for 33 years, same location, San Bruno. I am a Verizon customer, and I have no problems whatsoever at any time of the day. I noted when the staff gave the oral report, they claimed that they gave notice to 600 feet radius. I have the letter in front of me. It states 300. I went around, spoke with my neighbors. They did not know anything was taking place. They're in the shadows. And we are all very upset that we don't know what is going on in our city. I was in the June 19th first meeting that it passed against objections of 3-0. There's supposed to be 7 planning commissions. 1 was absent. 1 said no. 2 abstained. 3 said, yeah, let's do this. No, that is not acceptable. The numbers do not compute. 3 people can put all of our lives in jeopardy without any studies, without any consideration for our input. I say no. You need to overturn this. We need to do better justice for all of us. There was a question discussing the 50 feet mark that we're not allowed in San Bruno. Really? It was 3 inches. 3 inches makes a difference in our lives? No. Okay. 49 feet, 10 inches shy of what is allowable, under the 50, that's where they did the cutoff. Come on. We're not playing with inches here. We're playing with our lives, with our safety. This is not acceptable. Please take all of us into account. Thank you. And reverse the decision that was made. That was wrong.
Thank you, Lady Trips. Please.
Stephen Seymour.
Can we please, I know there are 3 more speakers, I believe.
We had 1 withdrawal.
Okay, so we have 2. Can you call the next couple up so that they can?
Stephen Seymour,
So I
and
know
the last
there's-
speaker will be Zidane Millie.
Just so everybody can get up. I know there's, to get through the crowd. Okay, I'm sorry. Mr. Seymour.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight proves our community can rally around important issues. David Waltering, our Community Development Director, stated that this tower is consistent with San Bruno's general plan. Looks like our general plan needs some updating. San Bruno needs greater transparency in all business matters. That's been brought up by many of the speakers. I learned about this through Nextdoor. I don't live anywhere near this, but I learned about it through Nextdoor. I don't want it in my neighborhood either. I'm encouraged by the public's concern in tonight's participation. I encourage everyone to keep your eyes open, pay attention to our city's direction. As a community, we can change San Bruno's direction. We can influence our elected officials to listen to those who elected them. And I ask everyone in this room to visit San Bruno Now Facebook page. Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you, Stephen. Next speaker.
Zidane Millie.
Zidane.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council members. I'm Zidane Millie, and okay, so I'm 17. I live on 161 Acacia Avenue,
And I've grew up here my whole life, so I care about my city, and I'll do anything to ensure our safety. So I'm going to keep this speech short and simple. I just want to emphasize the safety concern that many members of our community have. I want to make sure that the people feel safe and that their safety is ensured. We want to keep the safety of the children also. And I know that there are concerns with the radiation, the sound, and the stability of the tower. The radiation, to me, is like a snowball effect in which the radiation increases over time, thus making members of the community unsafe. Keeping in mind that other cities have also said no to this tower, it only makes sense for San Bruno to not have this tower also. We want to avoid future disasters and keep our city safe from future catastrophes. Before I end, just take in consideration all of our comments and concerns. Thank you for your time. I appreciate you for giving us time to speak about the tower, and that I'm confident that you will make the right decision, which is to oppose the cell tower. Thank you.
Thank you, Zone. Thank you to both of you for coming up to the podium. Folks, let's give each other a round of applause. Thank you very much. Thank you for your diligence and patience and courtesy to all the speakers, and thank you for being here and your comments. If there are no other speaker cards or speakers at this time, I'm going to ask for a motion to close the public hearing.
Can we go around once more, make sure nobody else wants to speak?
No.
I did put a card on another issue, but I have to wait.
We'll address
Yeah,
the
this is only on the cell towers.
Yeah.
Just the cell towers. Yes, sir.
I didn't fill out a card when I came in, but after listening to the presentation.
So because you've sat through all this, absolutely. Please come right to the podium. You'll have the same 2 minutes. Folks, this is why we do the cards, is so that we can do that. So this is the last speaker to my knowledge, and please. And if you could fill out the card for the city clerk when you're done, just so she has that, that would be helpful. Thank you.
I found this very enlightening, listening to everyone's point of view, but not hearing very little from the city council members on your point of view. So two of the questions I have are, it was raised that certain cities have denied this opportunity to Verizon. I believe Burlingame was one, and I believe San Mateo, please correct me. And then there were 2 cities outside of San Mateo County. So my question to the board is, how many of you knew about these cities who had turned down this application prior to you considering it? It's a rhetorical question. You don't have to answer me right now. But I think it's significant. How many of you knew that? And whether you knew it or didn't know it is significant. My second question is, how many of you have entered into communication with those cities who turned this down to find out why they turned it down? So you would have a greater knowledge base to make your decision. So what I'm asking is that you don't passively continue a decision that you allowed to happen, but that you actively investigate this issue and make an informed decision on whether to accept or deny this request. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for coming to the podium. I appreciate it. All right. He was the last. Applause is okay. Okay, so with that.
The chair?
Yes.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing at this point.
Is there a second?
Second.
So that will close the public hearing this evening, and then when we reconvene on the decision making, that will still remain closed. So this is to close the public hearing from now. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. Now, next on, as you see, number 8 is city response, if there is some, to the appellant's presentation.
So we're not done yet. We're not done with the topic just yet, so if people want to stick around there, there's more.
Yeah. So the next step, but it's on the agenda, is that the staff will go ahead and have a response to the appellant's presentation of up to 5 minutes. Go ahead, Dave.
Mr. Mayor and council members, as I indicated in the staff presentation, our intent really this evening is to receive information. So we received, as you did, the appellants and the applicants' presentations, and we've recommended to the City Council that you allow both the appellant and the applicant to provide replies back to staff by August 7th. We would receive that information. We would research and do analysis. A number of speakers tonight suggested that additional analysis would be done. Based on the information we heard tonight, we would do that additional analysis. We would provide a thorough written report to the City Council for your review and consideration. And again, as I indicated earlier, we would then suggest to you, recommend to you that you continue this item for your consideration of our report and your deliberation to a date certain, the date certain being September 25th. Thank you.
Okay, with that, there were a couple things, just to recap. It was to ask of the applicant and the appellant by August the 7th to have any additional information in to staff so that it can be reviewed in adequate time so it can be brought back on the 25th. So, because obviously if it gets in right before, that's what has happened in this situation, to do out of fairness, you know, as somebody asked, how come we're not saying what our feelings are? Because we're not in the decision tonight. And so we don't want to bias ourselves with the additional information that will be coming forward. What I'd also ask is at that time to staff, we have, I think most of my colleagues are writing down some of the questions. Some of them are some with the concerns that they have, whether it's the poll, whether it's the safety, a variable of questions. Can those also be addressed within that presentation on the 25th?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I've also been listing the comments tonight, so we have those as well.
And what also, the city clerk with her new form, you will be emailed if you've asked for it, the email, so you'll know our next meeting and you'll know it's on the agenda. Also, you can go to the staff report when it goes out on that Friday so that you have adequate time over the weekend to read any additional answers and information as well. So we'll be learning about all the answers together. So, any other, at this time, we're going to move to the City Council consideration for continuing the matter to the future meeting, which would be the August 25th.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Pardon me. The idea is that the appellant and the applicant submit information to staff by August 7th.
Correct.
And then the continuance of this matter would be to September 25th.
My apologies. Thank you for correcting me. I need to listen better.
Through the chair, can we address the issue that I've heard that, you know, I haven't been notified. I wasn't notified of this. I had to see it on Nextdoor. I had to get it forwarded through somebody else. Can you address the policy in the process?
So going on to the vice mayor, so some questions were raised. It's 300 feet on a form. It's stated verbally 600 feet. So I think that is one thing. It's that how is it really notified? I know I received a notification for where I lived for some other project. So what was, how is, and how will it be?
I'd be happy to respond to all of those questions. My understanding is that the noticing for Planning Commission was a 300-foot radius. As we move forward with this appeal, the information I received was that the notification was expanded to 600 feet plus the newspaper. I would propose that we stay by that for the September 25th meeting, that we would do a 600-foot radius mailing. We would also do the newspaper notification, and Mr. Mayor, as you indicated tonight, if there are people here that indicated an interest in receiving the agenda, we can check with the city clerk, obtain that information, and make sure that those people as well receive notification. So I would propose those individuals that indicate a desire to receive notification, a 600-foot radius, and newspaper for the September 25th meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Irene?
Yes, I been looking through some of the information that's in our packet, which is over 100 pages. So is it appropriate as we go through this again, to send you any other questions that we might have? Is that kosher to do? Okay.
Staff?
Then
Mark?
I will do that.
David, yes?
Actually, if you would send those to the city manager, then we can make sure that all of the relevant staff who may be involved in this matter can have an opportunity to know the questions and to provide pieces of the answers.
Okay, thank you, I will.
And to council, would it be acceptable by August 7th as the appellant and the applicant, so staff has adequate time for the September 25th continuance?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right, so then we will go ahead and, for council, we will go ahead, and again, appellant, applicant, August the 7th, and then reconvene on this matter on September the 25th.
Through the chair?
Yes.
If I could, we did get a communication from the city attorney regarding matters that he would be pursuing and investigating, but I would like to expand on what issues he has provided and ask him to also look into some of the issues that our last speaker brought up in terms of what are the neighboring communities doing. I've done a lot of research, but it was really limited to what I could find on the internet, what's been published, court documents. So there is some information, but I think hearing it firsthand from those communities would be important. I think, Mark, you mentioned that each city does have its own set of ordinances that would influence what those decisions were. But I think that is important information to bring back to us when we re-examine this.
Yes, it will be, and that has been on our list of things to do before the next meeting.
Okay.
And again, they have all the questions, so my expectation would be that all these questions that these folks asked will have some follow-up.
Okay.
But thank you for pointing that out, because it's a little more technical. Okay, then we will go ahead and we're going to move on from this topic. Why don't we take about a 5-minute break so everybody can feel comfortable to go ahead and depart and say goodbye.